Right, thank you. Good afternoon, folks. We're going to call the meeting to order at 4:03 p.m. And I'd like to read the acknowledgement for land. Halifax Regional Municipality is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and traditional lands of the Mi'kmaq people. The municipality acknowledges the peace and friendship treaties signed in this territory and recognizes that we are all treaty people. Thank you. We'll do a roll call. First of all, Elizabeth, can you see your interpreter?
Yes.
Okay, and Liz is here. Nicole McDonald?
I'm here.
Thank you. Rochelle Manette?
I'm here.
Thank you. Jordan Waterbury?
Here.
Thank you, Jordan. Kirsten Hemming? Did we receive regrets, Annie, on Kirsten?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I haven't received regrets from Kristen, but if she joins, I'll let you know in the chat.
Thank you. Councillor Paul Russell?
Good afternoon from Lower Sackville. It's a nice
Thank you.
warm day out there.
It's lovely. Councillor Kathy Dago-Gammon?
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair and colleagues and staff.
Good afternoon, Councillor. And we have regrets from Michelle Mahoney and Andrew Taylor. Am I missing anybody? All right, thank you. I'd like to consider next the approval of the minutes for June 20th and July the 4th. Have folks had the opportunity to review those? Okay. Are there any changes the committee wish to make on the minutes? Thank you. I'd like to call for a motion, please, to approve the minutes.
This is Rochelle. I'll motion.
For both sets of minutes, for the June 20th special committee and for the June 4th special committee and the June 20th accessibility committee.
And
Yes.
I'll second that. This is Liz.
Thank you, Liz. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Contrary minded? Thank you. Passed. Next, we'll do the approval of the order of business. Have there been any requests for additions, deletions, or changes to the order of business?
Thank you, Chair. The clerk's office did not receive any requests for additions, deletions, or changes.
Thank you. So I'd like to call for a mover to have the agenda approved as presented.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Seconder?
I'll second that. Councillor Russell.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
Thank you. Contrary minded? Do we have a question? No. Is
The
that
interpreter- No, the interpreters is raising their hand to express if they want to raise their hand. Now is the time for that.
okay? Thank you. Okay, passed. Business arising out of the minutes, we have none. I'd like to call for a declaration of conflict of interest. Is there any conflict of interest to be declared? If there is no declaration of interest, the meeting will proceed as follows. Consideration of deferred business, we have none. Correspondence, petitions, and delegations. Has there been any correspondence received?
Thank you, Vice Chair. There's been no correspondence received for today's meeting agenda.
Thank you very much. Petitions? Are there any petitions to be presented?
Thank you, Vice Chair, and there has been no notification of any petitions for today.
Thank you. And we have presentations next. We have none, correct? Okay, we'll proceed forward. Information, items brought forward, reports, and discussions. Annie?
Thank you, Vice Chair. So now we're on to the item 9.1.1 for the
Yes.
approval of the work plan. Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Vice Chair. I really appreciate everyone's input on the draft work plan. As I said at the July 4th meeting, over the past month, the committee gave Melissa and I so much to work with in terms of content and direction. So thank you to all members of the committee for participating and providing some guidance for us. I recognize that this is a pretty hefty document based on all of the conversations that have been had over the past month or so. So I just wanted to kind of provide a bit of an overview of, the document as it currently stands in draft form, and then what the intention is of this particular agenda item today. So in putting together the draft work plan, what I attempted to do, Melissa and myself, we attempted to, find as many places within the terms of reference as we could for all of the items that have been discussed since back in May. So we have a few different kind of priority topics that were put forward, and like I said, I kind of tried to connect them all by theme wherever possible. And I noted in the updated email that I sent earlier today with the draft work plan that the current top 3 priorities do not necessarily mean that these are the top 3 priorities at the end of the day. Just more so just providing committee members with the opportunity to see kind of, how items were ranked in previous discussions, so that everybody kind of has access to that information now when making the decision today. So the intention of this kind of part of the agenda will be that I will share my screen and kind of just go over each of the priorities that were identified, provide some examples of, how conversation tied to that particular priority, and outlining some examples of, what actions can be taken on behalf of the committee, before the end of the year. And one thing that I will say is that, there is a lot of content here. So I don't expect that everybody's read through every single piece here, but a lot of the pieces internally have really already kind of been discussed around, which business unit should be presenting on which topic and all of that stuff. So largely, some of the business unit names that members might not be familiar with, that's okay. You will become familiar with them in time when they come to present to the committee. So so maybe I'll start sharing my screen here. And after we kind of go through this, I'll be happy to answer any questions of clarification that members may have. And then the hope is that members will kind of go through and identify their top 3 priorities as outlined within this document, and as well as outlining any potential number for presentations that you would hope to receive on that topic throughout the rest of the year. And on that number of presentations, I will note that there are 5 meetings left for the rest of this year, including the town hall, which is generally in November, and we'll talk about that on the next agenda item. And generally, best practice would be that there would be 2 presentations maximum per meeting, so that the committee can also attend to, other business that may arise that may not be related to presentations. So just keeping that in mind for when we kind of go to that discussion, and I'm happy to reiterate that part of the conversation when we get there. But I will share my screen. Okay. And it is a bit difficult for me when I'm sharing my screen to see all of the members. So I would ask maybe if we could hold off on questions until the end of this session, and I'm happy to, again, answer any clarification questions that folks might have. So the first page is largely just kind of, relating to the terms of reference for the committee. So just, letting everybody know, not only on this committee, but also for the executive standing committee who will be approving this work plan once the committee has approved it, that, where the terms of reference were being pulled from, how it's within the committee's purview to kind of work on some of these things. So that's all kept there. And then I just have these pieces, highlighted here where, if there is 3 items that are selected today for action items, I would say that 3 should probably be the max, just in terms of kind of the amount of topics that can kind of be discovered in each of these priority items, as well as around planning the town hall as well. So if the committee does move to approve the work plan today, I will just augment this to be reflective of, what actually happened here today. So the breakdown of the work plan that committee members have seen before, and when I had shared the former, the 2021 work plan, was that it outlines actions or subcategories aligning with the terms of reference, and that's largely, Melissa and I just making that make sense behind the scenes, and then just identifying, what some resources could be, whether that's internal to the HRM, external funding, all of that good stuff. Broad timeframes that I don't think, where we're halfway through the year. I think if we say that it's 2022, well, then we're working towards it in 2022. And I think that that's likely good for now. And then based on the conversation that has been had over the past month, I also outlined some of the desired outcomes related to the priorities. And the final piece is performance indicators, so progress tracking. And I've included a couple of examples here on the right-hand side in the last column, and those are really just repeated throughout the document as the same kind of standard, motions that can be taken on these items. The first item that was of a high priority for the committee in previous discussions was accessible parking services in transportation in HRM. So within that topic, the expertise or the resources kind of needed there would be staff members within the HRM and some of the business units that had been previously discussed, as well as some of the work that Melissa and I did to kind of, identify programs and relevant kind of topics since our last meeting. So that would be around parking services, Halifax Transit, Public Works, planning and development, and property, fleet, and environment. All of these pieces really touch on accessible parking services and transportation in HRM. And then under the desired outcome, I've outlined some of the different, topics that could be encompassed under this item, particularly like having presentations or receiving information about accessible parking, placement and process for selection of those parking spaces, impact of bike lanes on accessible parking, impact of snow removal on accessible parking, built form of some of the municipally owned parking lots and parkades, as well as the technology associated with parking. And then some pieces around kind of accessible transportation and active transportation. And then within that, not only receiving information from business units about, what programs exist, but then also providing information either back to staff as well as to regional council through the executive standing committee regarding, some of the maybe like, issues that persons with disability are facing with respect to some of these topics, and also just like broader accessibility considerations. And then for the performance indicators, I have outlined a couple of examples here. I think the most tangible one for many of these would be, the committee members will receive like at least X amount of presentations throughout the rest of the year. Another option too, kind of like stemming from that, would be that, where there is like data lacking and, maybe the committee is hoping that the executive standing committee could ask for a staff report or commission a staff report on getting some further information that could be put forward as a motion. And I would always be happy to work with members to kind of finesse what that motion could look like and make sure it's, fits within the terms of reference, all of that good stuff, to be either passed along to executive standing committee to ask for a report, or to suggest further action be taken on, any of the items that have been identified here. So that is the first that's the first priority. So I'll go a little bit more high level now that I've kind of broken down, what each kind of like priority looks like in terms of how it's laid out here. The tentative priority 2 was around educating the community on disability and accessibility. So outlined several different business units that can be kind of tapped in here to discuss, accessibility services and education on accessibility in persons with disabilities within the HRM. That was a piece of the conversation of, wanting to understand, at camps or at Halifax Public Libraries, like what services are available and how is it being prioritized throughout the municipality. On this piece as well, I included the town hall within this. I think that's where this item fell last year within the work plan, and it's I think we can expect that that'll probably be a standing agenda item for the next few months until the town hall takes place. And then expertise from committee members and other community organizations that are either advocating for or like prioritizing accessibility within their day-to-day work. So the kind of desired outcomes here would be the annual town hall serving as an opportunity for business units to provide information on the program, services, strategies, but also, it's a two-way street communication-wise, where members of the community are also able to ask questions, provide feedback, get more information, all of that. All of that. And, we'll kind of dig into, what that structure can look like over the next few meetings for sure. And then in terms of like desired outcomes, I'd already kind of spoken to, understanding a little bit more about accessibility services and education through Parks and Recreation at Halifax Public Libraries, broader municipal services for those with intellectual disabilities, standards for ASL interpretation at meetings and events of the Halifax Regional Municipality, the relationship between the HRM and the Accessibility Directorate, and the potential for a live chat option on the HRM website or within 311. And so within the kind of, goal tracking piece here would be, that the annual town hall is planned and it functions with with everybody kind of working together, and then the information that is taken from that town hall is then forwarded along to the executive standing committee. I've also included here the pieces around X amount of presentations received on these topics, and the option again to ask for more information through the executive standing committee to see if they will ask for a staff report. The next piece was around built form. So there was a few different pieces kind of working here. So it touches a few different kind of business units regarding, impacts of construction on accessibility within the HRM, accessibility of sidewalks broadly, and accessibility of HRM owned infrastructure. So not only will this kind of relate to, certain programs that already exist within the municipality around, road and sidewalk audits, but also the opportunity to kind of explore the standards for accessibility considerations in construction projects within the municipality, impact of curb cuts, decision-making processes for placement of accessible infrastructure, and that was particular to Parks and Recreation, I believe, but can certainly, at the committee's direction, can make sure that when Melissa and I reach out to business units that we're talking to the right people based on the committee's direction. Accessible playgrounds and information on standards for upgrades. There was a piece around lack of public washrooms, 24/7 public washrooms and accessible public washrooms. And so tied that to the HRM's public washrooms and drinking fountains strategy. And then, incorporating kind of accountability measures through each of these topics that was a point of interest for discussion at the last meeting. All of these kind of projects are moving forward, and then what accountability measures are put in place to ensure that timelines are adhered to. And then again, I have put here as examples for, receiving X amount of presentations and potentially forwarding along that information to the business unit. Okay. So the next piece that I have, so these were the kind of the top three topics from previous conversations, and then here are some of the other ones that were discussed as well that fit within the terms of reference. So housing security for persons with disabilities. Getting in touch with folks at Parks and Recreation and the Public Safety Office, and potentially community organizations as well on accessible and affordable housing within the municipality. And the information would again be about programs, services, and strategies regarding accessible, affordable housing. Again, not only through the HRM staff, but also through any community organizations that members might be interested in hearing from if this is chosen as a priority, and have made sure that that's included here, to make sure that it's both business units and community organizations, if that is a direction the committee would like to go in. Another priority discussion piece was around kind of consultation measures on the impact of social policies passed by the HRM or introduced by the HRM and its impact on persons with disabilities. So the main point of conversation around this at the last meeting was particularly around, a choice to ban plastic straws. So there's a bit of a jurisdictional piece here as well as to, where does that kind of ruling come from? Is it introduced by the municipality on its own, or is there different levels of government involved there where it's more of a directive rather than necessarily a decision at the end of the day by the HRM? And then kind of consultation measures within social policy development, kind of what currently exists and what, might the committee want to see considered in the future. The next piece was around reviewing the Accessibility Advisory Committee terms of reference with an emphasis on plain language. So this process would require, some support from legal and legislative services, because all of the terms of reference need to be vetted by legal, and also, some support potentially from the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and potentially as well, like from community members or community organizations that might have, some experience in creating accessible plain language within legal or legislative documentation in particular. So that would require, probably like a multi-meeting process where, some information would be provided potentially, maybe through a joint presentation through legal and legislative services and, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, and then, passing along, recommendations for what could be included, and then Executive Standing Committee would then, consider, kind of getting the ball rolling on that with legal and legislative services to make sure that it's moving in the right direction. The last few pieces were around HRM programs, services, and strategies prioritizing immunocompromised populations throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. So this was a bit broader during the discussion that we had, or that the committee had last month. And I tried to tie it back directly to municipal services or like programs and strategies, so that if the committee would like to move forward with, understanding what services are there and what's being done, that, it's not tied to something that is out of scope through the province, but it is, more on the ground in terms of what the municipality is doing or has been doing. So that follows the same piece here around, receiving presentations from X amount of business units, passing along information to Executive Standing Committee. The second last one, or maybe third last one here, is around solid waste management and green bin regulations. So this wasn't, I don't believe, spoken about at the last meeting, but just wanted to, provide members with the reminder that has been discussed thus far. And this was largely around, accessibility concerns with, potential fines that could be put in place on folks if they don't have their green bin moved in at the specific point of day, and that it might be due to, accessibility concerns. So I have that placed there as well. And then the last piece that we had was there was a discussion around options for the elimination of drive-through facilities. So this was a report that was put forward back in 2019. And I currently don't know where it stands, but, I would say that this would be more of a potential one-off kind of scenario rather than, a kind of potentially larger strategic conversation than some of the other motions are, because it would largely be around finding out what the status of the report is, getting that right staff in, and all of that. Yeah, good stuff. And then there are a couple pieces here that were not included in the final draft work plan, and that is because they were out of scope. So one of the main item there being reviewing kind of home care practices and home care services within the HRM. So that wasn't included because that was out of scope, but everything else that is in here kind of tried to maneuver into, the terms of reference and relating it to the municipality and relating it to, accessibility. And so ensuring that, everything that has been discussed as much as possible could be on the table for priorities to select. But now comes the hard part, I guess. I'm happy if, first I'd be happy to answer any potential clarification questions that folks might have. But then after that, we'll be hoping that, folks could identify their 3 priorities, on those priorities, how many presentations you would like to potentially have on that item. And then I will kind of be tallying everything up at the as the conversation goes on. And at the end of that conversation, I will do some, some really fun tally math. And I will let everybody know kind of what the final top 3 priorities are before the committee votes on the work plan. So I can stop sharing my screen now, but if any of the committee members would prefer that I bring it back up for discussion, I'm happy to do that as well. But I'll turn it over to our vice chair until then.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, so we're going to ask if there's any questions or clarifications needed with regards to this presentation. And we'll start off, please, with Rochelle.
Yeah, thanks for thank you, Vice Chair, and thank you, Annie, for doing all of that very intense work. Documents are so fun to compile. I don't know if this is, and so just to clarify, like right now, I'm meant to ask any like clarifying questions about the report versus actually, or are we going to get into discussing those bigger priorities? I guess I'm a little confused of what exactly we're doing right at this moment.
I would suggest, if you have some concerns that you'd like to bring forward as well, Rochelle, absolutely.
And then it's just the, okay, I could ask questions to clarify, but also are we meant to
Yes.
Discuss generally which priorities we want to keep and which ones we want to prioritize or review, or is that sort of the
Yes,
idea?
folks are going to be asked to identify the top 3 priorities.
Okay, got it.
Great.
Oh yeah. So I guess oh gosh, I don't even know. So all of them feel like very important priorities to address. And I think all of them kind of affect each other. I don't know. There's, I guess a couple things I did want to bring up around the language, and I'm not sure if this has to do with the scope sort of issue. When it comes to when we were talking about ASL and interpretation, I think that we had pretty eagerly discussed a variety of interpretive services, not just ASL interpretation in the previous meeting that we had, where, and Liz is mentioning CART. So I also kind of want to echo that, accessibility is related to more than just specifically disability. And my understanding is that that is part of our scope, but maybe I'm misunderstanding the scope a little bit. But just from a disability justice perspective, we live more than single issue lives. It feels this committee should be aware of that and sort of working within that framework in some capacity. And so similarly, the language around housing security, it was pretty specific to accessible housing for people with disabilities. But accessible housing can be what's the word I'm looking for? A pre-disability approach, I can't think of the word I'm looking for. My brain fog is all over the place today. But we avoid more disability when it comes to housing security and things like that. So yeah, I guess is it because of the scope that we have to specifically say disability related housing, or are we able to, support other reasons that housing needs to exist, although they're all kind of related.
Thank you, through you, Vice Chair, to the committee member. On the kind of different types of interpretation, that was an oversight on my part, and I think I was sticking to the piece around kind of delving into ASL interpretation or CART captioning services provided at meetings or events, because I know that there are certain policies that exist and I just don't have them on hand to do it. So that's why I kind of had honed in on that first, but that was certainly an oversight on my part. So I can definitely, expand that piece around standards for ASL interpretation, CART, and other interpretation services at meetings and events of the HRM. If that, if that's like comfortable for members. And then and then I think another piece around communication was the live chat option for HRM website and 311. And then with respect to housing scope, was the struggle that I was working with there. And I looked to what some of the other other advisory committees are doing around, trying to make sure that the topic can kind of be honed in to the committee, kind of terms of reference, and it was using the lens of the space that it was within. So, I think there's certainly still a lot of room for, what can be discussed in terms of bringing in like community organizations. Like the organization doesn't necessarily have to be, in accessibility or, disability, like justice related, like space. It can be around housing with that lens. If that clarifies anything, but that piece in particular was scope.
Yeah, I thought so. That makes sense. Thanks for answering that. Yeah, I think that's all the questions I have now. I feel like I'll pass it off to someone else to start the rest, because I'm not sure where to go from here.
All right, thank you, Rochelle. Elizabeth, have any questions with regards to clarification, concerns around the work plan?
Oh, me. Okay. Sorry, could you repeat that? What am I discussing?
Considering any clarification that you need around the work plan, or any concerns that you might have for what's already been documented on the work plan.
I have it actually in the chat. I typed it in the chat there earlier, if you just want to read that. That's what I had. Question
All
marks.
right.
Chair, if you would like, I'd be happy to read out the questions and respond to them.
And also, I had
Sure.
something else as well.
Go ahead, Elizabeth.
Yes, I also just wanted to add in relation to the diversity piece for deaf and hard of hearing individuals. And not only sort of that deaf perspective of individuals who use ASL, but deaf or hard of hearing individuals that are not culturally deaf, so that may not use sign language, or that may not be their mode of communication. And there are some older individuals, as a general rule, seniors, who do end up becoming more sort of hard of hearing or deafened later in their life. So to be sure that we're including them as well, we don't want to exclude those individuals by just labeling everyone as deaf. I think it's important to have that category of hard of hearing as well.
Thank you. Annie, in relation to your question, you certainly can read them.
Thank you kindly, Chair, and thank you to the member for the questions. So the questions that I have outlined here, I believe are related to what the member had just mentioned. It would be good if subtitles or captions be made available. It could be via Otter AI or its equivalent, as there's diversity within the deaf community. In other words, there are all kinds of communications available. Another availability is CART, which is done professionally. And so I hope that, and again, my apologies for kind of honing in on only one aspect of that part of the conversation from our last meeting, but I have expanded this now to be standards for ASL interpretation, CART, and other interpretation services at meetings and events of the HRM. So maybe I'll pause there to just see what the member thinks and then can go.
Thank you, Annie.
Fantastic, thank you.
All right, thank you.
Wonderful.
Is that it for you, Elizabeth?
There was still a few other in the chat, if that's okay.
Certainly, absolutely, Annie. Sorry, go ahead.
No, thank you so much. So the next piece was another issue with recycling is that it is required of people disposing electronics, computers, etc. in a different area is not allowed to dump them in the garbage. That is something that I do not know. I think that would be one of the things that solid waste could speak to. Potentially, we could tie that to the grain bin regulations item, if that is something that folks would like to explore and address as a priority. Yeah, I think that maybe that's where we could fit that one in. And then the last question is, do I understand that there will be no drive-through at fast food restaurants? And I'm sure that customers and employees won't be able, like, just outlining that would be an issue. So on that piece, that would be one of the last items that I had put together within the work plan, that there was a report on the potential elimination of drive-through facilities that was created in 2019. And at the very least, it would be asking for an update on that report because I do not know what the current process or what the current update on that particular report is. So that's kind of where I tied in there. But my understanding from a brief read of the report is that it is not what was proposed back in 2019 was not the full elimination, but the consideration of a reduction of future ones to be put up.
Thank you. Okay. All right, next, please, we have Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. I think the list looks good. I'm not sure about the drive-through restaurants. One of the things that you have in there is that all of the resources that we will be hearing from are HRM staff. And I'm wondering if there has been or could be consideration for a lot of it for folks from external organizations who deal with accessibility, like the Rick Hansen Institute, and then with the COVID item, having someone in from public health.
Thank you, Chair, and through you to the councillor. So certainly, really for any of these items, I would say that community organizations can absolutely be reached out to just in the time that we had in terms of identifying, what we had internally to work with. That's kind of what took precedent. But certainly, once the priorities are identified, should members of the committee have recommendations on external organizations or community organizations that Melissa and I can reach out to, and I'm sure Melissa also has, quite a few in her back pocket to provide, that they can definitely be explored for sure. And then the piece around COVID, this one was a bit tricky in terms of scope as well, just trying to tie it specifically back to municipal services, or, that's kind of the scope there that I was trying to work with. This could also point to a jurisdictional piece though as well, where, even if public health were to potentially come in and say, like, these are the hard lines, or this is what municipalities are being directed to do, or like this is the leniency that municipalities have around this, like that could be an option to be explored there as well.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. Annie, thank you for this, and thank you, Melissa. I apologize for missing the last meeting. Excuse me, where the committee did a lot of really excellent work, it seems, and Annie, you did a good job of pulling it all together.
Mhm.
And I'm sorry, I've got a bad voice today. If I remember correctly, so we have 5 meetings left, and that could potentially mean 10 presentations. So picking our priorities specific to who may be ready to make a presentation and that's available to us could be interesting. In terms of priorities, the built environment I think is really important as a priority. I like that one very much. And educating the community on disability and accessibility, I get as it applies to HRM services and supports. I think that one as well has a lot that we can work with as a committee. So if I was picking 2, I would say those are 2 that I think we have the most influence maybe over in terms of 1-year annual work plan. And that way bringing in community consultations after you, either before or after we hear the HRM business unit, I think that will be a worthwhile exercise for us to get through. And it actually might move us then into some of those really good actionable items that will, maybe get a staff report at executive standing committee. So those would be my 2 priorities. And then the other ones I think would follow. I'm a little bit worried about the housing security for persons with disabilities, where housing is not a municipal mandate. And I just don't know. I know it says section A to C, but or 6A to C, when I read those, I get a little bit worried that, is that going to get us anywhere? It is good around education and awareness, but is it going to move some of the services and programs from HRM? I guess I'm just a little bit leery about the scope there and what we might be able to do with it. And I very much appreciate the consultation measures and the impact on social policies. So if I had to pick a 3rd, it might be that one, because there are policies that are going to be coming forward that people don't understand what the unintended consequences are. So the excellent example of banning plastic and straws, where sometimes persons with disabilities, the plastic item that they may or may not have to use is essential. And figuring out what an alternative might be cost prohibitive in some places and for some people's experiences. So for us to understand what is the unintended consequence of that, I think is a really important thing. So yeah, if we had to pick a 3rd, I would pick the impact on social policies. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Jordan Waterbury.
Thank you, Vice Chair and members and the committee clerk. My top 2 priorities would have to be the 2nd and the 3rd tentative priority, just because I find that they're more broad and we're more able to work with what we have and the time we have remaining on them. But my 3rd choice, if I had to pick between the 2, it was originally plain language or housing, but I had to kind of pick the housing one, just as I think that the municipality can play a collaborative role with other levels of government. And I know we do have the community planning department that kind of directs how planning is done in the municipality. So I know from reading in the media and other business sources with my degree that there are different ways that municipalities have been able to encourage through planning and such to create more accessible housing. Just even an environmental scan of what other people have done would be great. So those are just my top 3 priorities. Other than that, I think what the other committee members have said and the committee clerk has added have been very good in building on this. And I'm excited to see where we can go with all this. So
Great. Thank you very much. And Nicole? Clarification questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right, thank you. Anything to add, Annie?
Thank you, Vice Chair. Thank you so much, everybody, for your questions and your feedback. And the only thing that I wanted to outline too around housing is that it's tricky from a few different areas, because there's also a sorry, the word is escaping me right now. There's only so much that the committee can explore with respect to planning and development as it relates to large scale planning strategies of the municipality. And so I think if housing were to be one of the options that were chosen, and I think built form would also be one that might need to be explored a little bit as well, just in terms of scope. However, I don't anticipate that it is as much of an issue for built form as it would be for housing, because it specifically says in the terms of reference that, you know, the committee is exempt kind of from looking into items within the grander like center plan package B, which is a big kind of planning priority piece for the municipality. So on that front, you know, I think if housing is selected, I think the first kind of conversation will need to be with planning and development as well, about how far can we go even with the smaller kind of scope that we have within the municipality. So yeah, really appreciate it. And Jordan, sorry, through Chair, to the committee member, would you mind if I read your question from the chat, or would you prefer to say it yourself?
Yes, Madam Chair and Annie, I could read from it, or if you need explanation of it. I know it's just kind of more so something that's in my mind, so I can explain it for sure, if that's okay, Chair.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
So what I was thinking of when I'm thinking about as it relates to housing, because I have reviewed the terms of reference, and it's such a nuanced, it's a nuanced topic, and it's not even just a municipal one. There's federal involvement, there's private sector involvement, there's provincial involvement. But what I wanted to just know is like more of an information session rather than trying to direct anything. I just think it would be great to know what's being done and what's being considered, but not making any like motions to suggest anything, just more of an information like session kind of thing, just to see what's happening, and just to have a discussion, but not really anything directed to anyone to do any concrete things within the terms of the committee. So that was just my thought, but I know that one's a thorny issue, but it seems to be one that relates to built form, and if I had to pick, I would probably go with the built form and the social policy one rather than that one personally. But it just seems to be something I hear a lot about from people in the community and such. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay. The intent was that we would go back around in terms of priorities. Some folks have already let us know their priorities. So I'm just going to quickly go through the list. And for those folks that haven't, if you might be able to speak to your priorities. Elizabeth?
Can I just defer my place and go after?
Yeah, if you could just put me last.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Russell, I think you've already considered your priorities. Is there something you'd like to add?
If there was a fourth priority, it would be the terms of reference in plain language. But otherwise, the three that are indicated are great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dago Gammon?
Madam Vice Chair.
I've given you my three. I'm all good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Yes, Annie, sorry.
My apologies. Through you, Chair, to the councillor, I'm wondering if I could potentially have a reminder of the three priorities. What is it, the three priorities that are currently outlined as the top three?
Annie, is that to me?
Oh, sorry, Councillor Russell.
Okay.
Thank you.
But thank you, Councillor Degelgame, and I have yours.
The three that you have listed were the top three, with the fourth one being, the terms of reference. Thank you.
Great,
Okay.
thank you. Jordan, I think you've already spoke to yours. Is there anything you need to add?
No, I'm good.
All right,
I think the top three ones are good as well, so either works for me. Thank you.
great, thank you. Nicole, your top three priorities.
The top three that listed are good to me as well.
That are currently there.
Yes.
Thank you. Rochelle, you had noted your priorities. Is there anything you'd like to add or clarify?
Yeah, I feel like thank you. I feel like I sort of like asked a lot of questions and didn't clarify any priorities. So happy to do that now.
Okay.
Yeah, I feel very strongly that, and I know that it is complicated with scope stuff, but I do think that the way COVID-19 policies are handled affects municipality like pretty significantly, like within some of our other priorities as well. And so this is also a question, again, for clarification, sorry, if we can somehow build that into some of the stuff, even around like education or something. But if not, then that for me becomes quite a high priority. I was just noticing how, and I don't know if this is a municipal thing, but it felt like it was like Halifax Pride, which I could not go to, even though I am queer, because of a lack of COVID measures, like deeply so. And so when there's no expectation of those from a municipal setting, it's kind of, anyways, it excludes people pretty aggressively and puts a lot of people in harm's way. So I guess for me, however we can be involved in COVID-19 stuff, that is a priority for me. And then in terms of the other two, definitely, I always have a lot of questions about like parking and transportation and stuff like that. So the tentative priority 1 and the tentative priority 3 feels pretty like big kind of on my priority list, but definitely like top tier priority for me is around COVID-19 and the, keeping people safe through that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Rochelle. And that's it. Back to you, Annie.
Thank you, Vice Chair. I believe Liz was going to provide.
I'm very sorry, Liz.
This is Liz. Sorry, I never like to go first. So that's why I just asked to be put on the end. Sorry about that. So, there's lots of issues. I think this year, I would say the biggest piece for me would be education and communication. The housing, I do see a lot of discussion on housing. There's a lot of the tent cities that you see happening over HRM right now, which obviously is preferable. It'd be nice if we were able to deal with the housing issues so that those individuals can find safe and affordable housing. As well as I know the apartment prices right now are a little bit crazy as well. So that's quite an issue for a lot of individuals. Sorry, the interpreters are just checking for a language piece. Sorry, so we need enough money in order for us to build, in order for individuals to have places to be and to live safely. I think so. That may not be in our scope or in our purview either, but I would like to see more housing for individuals, so that we're not seeing people, you know, who are having to live on the street and that sort of thing. So maybe that would be my number one. Specifically this year, that seems to be an even greater issue. And I think providing access for everyone is important as well, in whatever capacity that ends up in.
Okay,
Vice Chair, might
Yes.
I be able to ask a question of clarification?
absolutely.
Thank you very much. I believe, thank you, and sorry, there's also a delay on my computer as well, so I apologize. But I just wanted to confirm, I believe from Liz, I have education and housing, and I'm just wondering if there's a third.
Communication.
Education and communication, I would put those in one category together as my first. So like plain language, that sort of thing for the education and communication, and number two being housing. And number three is just a general accessibility for everyone, whatever that may look like. Yeah, accessibility for everyone. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Sorry, my apologies. Yes. So Vice Chair as well, where we have a few members missing today as well, just to make sure that the final kind of tally is reflective of kind of a good majority of the members. Should the Vice Chair feel comfortable with identifying three priorities, I can certainly take that into consideration as well. But also, if Vice Chair, if you feel uncomfortable doing so, that is also.
Thank you, Annie. If I had the opportunity to recommend priorities, it would be set out as they tentatively are set out. I think from the education perspective, and I think maybe Councillor Russell had mentioned this about outside organizations or bodies presenting, and I think that is extremely important. So with education, it's one thing to know what's going on in the HRN, but we need to understand how that is connected or not with other priorities that are happening at different government levels or in other offices. The other little piece with that, see, you gave me an opportunity, Annie. The other little piece with that is I'm wondering at some point if it might be worthwhile that the committee is briefed in some way of what some of the other committees are doing through HRM. We get to read the little bit that is set for advertising when folks want to join or apply, but you really don't get the detail of what's going on. So maybe from the education piece, we could add some of that, and staff, it could be yourself or Melissa or whomever might want to present that, or people actually from those committees. But I think that would be important to know, to see if, again, there's any crossover or if there's something that we can complement. Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Now, Annie's going to tally up the priorities, which she already mentioned, and she'll share a final draft work plan on the screen. Is that going to happen today, Annie, or is that something you'll send to us?
Thank you, Vice Chair. I've tallied it all up, and I can share it on the screen right now if members are comfortable with that. Okay.
Thank you.
Share my screen here. So the final tally, and I have rearranged them based on the amount of members that identified them. Educating the community on disability and accessibility is a priority, like, 1, which is wonderful. I think that had, every member of the committee identifying that piece. That's what we have there. And I've added in some of the pieces that have been discussed throughout the discussion today as well. Priority 2 was kind of built form, impacts of construction and general kind of like infrastructure pieces. And then the final priority was with 4 members selecting this piece was accessible parking services and transportation within the HRM. Certainly, as mentioned previously, there is definitely, room for like members to provide external like organizations or community organizations that you would like Melissa or myself to reach out to, and in terms of crafting motions, all of that good stuff. I'm here to help with that. And really appreciate all members of the committee for speaking so openly and sharing kind of their interest for the rest of this year. And I think that the last question that I have was just around potentially identifying a number of presentations on each of the topics. So where there is 5 meetings left, but that's also including the town hall. I'm wondering if splitting between the 3 topics, receiving at least 3 no, that's 6. No, that's 9. Sorry, I'm doing math and I'm not good at it. But I promise the tallies worked because I did it by hand. That was different. I'm wondering if 3 would be an acceptable number on each of these presentations, if the committee would like to have it split across the board evenly, or if the committee would like to have, one of the priorities have 4 and another have 2, max. I will fill in the number as the committee directs.
Do we have any suggestions from the members on this? Rochelle?
I'm not sure if I should just start talking. I imagine that with some of these priorities, there would be some overlap, like within presentations. So like I imagine like with some built environment stuff and education stuff, there'd be overlap with built environment and transportation. So I feel like splitting it evenly theoretically could account for like all of them, I guess, holding some sort of space for that possible overlap. Yeah, they all seem sort of relatively related to each other anyways. Yeah, that's just my 2 cents.
Great. Thank you. Do we have any other suggestions, comments?
Chair, I have a comment just echoing what Rochelle, the said. I agree that I think splitting them evenly is the best way to account for the differences and the intersections of the topics. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. No other comments? All right, thank you.
This is
Now that-
Liz. I put mine in the chat.
And what Elizabeth is saying is I think 2 each would be good so they can support each other by adding information, just in case one speaker forgets to mention it. Thank you, Liz.
Just in case.
Thank you. Okay. All right, now that we've had the priorities selected, I'll ask a member to put forward the following motion on the floor. That the Accessibility Advisory Committee approve the 2022 work plan and forward it to the Executive Standing Committee for approval.
And this is Liz. Could I get those 3 priorities again, please? Sorry.
My apologies, everyone. So the first priority is educating the community on disability and accessibility. And there's certainly a lot to work from here. The next topic was around built form, so impacts of construction on accessibility within the HRM, accessibility of sidewalks, and accessibility of HRM owned infrastructure. And then the third priority is accessible parking, parking services, and transportation in the HRM.
Thank you, Annie.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're back to the motion, and I can certainly read it again. That the Accessibility Advisory Committee approved the 2022 work plan and forwarded to Executive Standing Committee for approval. Do I have a mover?
This is Rochelle. I'll move.
Thank you. Seconder?
This is Jordan Waterbury. I'll second that.
Thank you, Jordan. Call for the question. All those in favor, say aye or raise your hand.
Aye.
I,
Contrary minded?
Sorry, I had my camera up there. I'm just eating my supper.
That's fine, Nicole. Thank you.
Aye.
The motion has been approved, passed. Thank you. Okay, annual town hall planning. Annie, can you speak to the 2021 town hall and 2022 annual town hall, please?
Absolutely, and thank you so much, Vice Chair, and congratulations to the committee on the approval of your work plan. Very exciting. Looking forward to working with all of you and working with Melissa to have some really wonderful discussions moving forward. So great segue. Glad that that the committee selected educating the community as one of the top priorities because the town hall is a wonderful mechanism to be able to do that. So my apologies for not completing a memo as I had initially planned for today's meeting. This will be a little bit more of a verbal update, but I can definitely delve into the nitty gritty of last year's town hall at the next meeting for sure. I'm looking for just a little bit of direction from the committee in terms of some preferences for dates. And that will allow Melissa and I to get the ball rolling on some conversations with, corporate communications with our bosses regarding budget stuff and regarding some other potential partners that were explored last year for the town hall. So during last year's town hall, last year was a bit of a special year because the town hall did not occur during 2020 in light of the pandemic. So there was a little bit more budget to play with, and there was an opportunity to kind of explore like a little bit more in terms of like what a bigger budget could provide for. I think this year Melissa and I will certainly do our best to ensure that this is as accessible and as engaging as the last town hall was in terms of access to the space as well. And there are some different options that we can look into and provide to the committee down the road on what form the committee or what form the town hall might take for this year. So just as kind of a refresher for some and potentially new information for some members of the committee, last year's town hall was the topic was just kind of regarding updates from members from business units that either have accessibility like programs, or there are programs that kind of touch on accessibility measures within the community, providing an update to the entire community, and then facilitating questions both in person at Paul O'Regan Hall in the Halifax Public Library and online through Zoom to be able to make sure that folks had their questions answered. So last year, between all of the in-person and online locations, we had 7 different business units represented to speak to the different kind of programs or services that were being offered through their business unit with regards to accessibility. And between in person and online, I'll say that the majority of folks did attend online at the end of at the town hall. I think the majority of the questions were coming from the folks who were joining through Zoom. And also, recognizing that the committee, or sorry, the annual town hall took place in November. It has normally taken place in November, and that is, I think largely to allow for just like planning purposes throughout the year. Often the Accessibility Advisory Committee and other committees under the umbrella of council might not meet throughout the summer, so it just provides, a good kind of opportunity for planning depending on, what the committee agendas would look like. As we just kind of identified, I might not take August 15th off of your calendars just yet, based on the work plan that was just passed and some of the discussions that we'll have in the future. But I'll say that the majority of the work that Melissa and I really did occur from, July onwards. There was both Melissa and my first time kind of, running all of the logistics behind the scenes, and we learned a lot. And but one of the things that we definitely learned is that, having a date set, having, like that discussed early on in the committee really allows, us to be able to facilitate procurement stuff, like make sure that the space is booked. Like it may seem like November is a long time away, but folks are definitely already itching to book like public spaces already. So yeah, I think there's definitely like lots of room for conversation in terms of, maybe what form the town hall can take this year, or like what theme potentially, if the committee would like to do something more interactive. Like these are all kind of discussions that can be had, you know, down the road. And but I think, you know, today I'm kind of looking to the committee to see if I can get some potential preferences on date. Again, seems like it's really far away, but even having the particular week in November will be really helpful for Melissa and I to start those conversations. So last year, the town hall took place on November 10th, which was a Thursday. And it was right before the long weekend, like right before Remembrance Day. And I like I said, I think that the turnout
if I
was,
may, Annie, if I may, last year, November 10th was a Wednesday.
yes, it was. And
It was November 10th last year. That's right.
yeah, it was November 10th. And then I'm looking at the calendar now, and November 10th is a Thursday this year. That is how time works. It goes one day forward each year, correct?
I remember, this is Liz, I remember that as well because I had a surgery booked 2 days after that, so.
Yeah, that's a memorable one for sure, absolutely. But yeah, so November 10th, which was a Wednesday. So the day kind of, you know, before a statutory holiday, and yeah, would still say that there was a great turnout, both in person and online. So this year, the week after Halloween tends to be a bit of a busy one potentially. So the weeks that we're looking at would be from the week of November 7th to the 10th. Again, turnout on Fridays is usually not great. And my understanding as well is that the best turnout for this event over years past has been that when it's taken place in the evening. So the suggestion that I would like to put forward would be the week from November 7th to 10th, or the week of November 14th to 17th. And I know that there's a ton of considerations, around, potential snow, around accessibility, or around Accessibus booking. Wanted to kind of, let some of the new members know that there is at each of the town halls, regardless of kind of how it takes place, there's always ASL interpretation. There has always been cart captioning services, and Accessibus is always like put forward as, an option for getting to and from that space and booking them far in advance. So all of that information is available, will be made available online to folks. And yeah, I'm not sure if I'm missing anything here, but I'd be happy to turn it over to Melissa if there's anything additional that she'd like to mention.
Thanks so much, Amy. I think you did a great job at summarizing kind of last year's town hall and kind of what we're looking for the committee for this year.
Wonderful. Thank you, Melissa. So I guess with that, Madam Vice Chair, I can turn it back over to you. I'm happy to try to answer any questions, again, with the caveat that I'll provide an actual in-depth memo for the committee to have access to. But I will also note that the video from the town hall is still online. The minutes from the town hall are also online and were forwarded to Executive Standing Committee, I believe, in February. I'd be happy to, circulate that for the next meeting as well, or at the very least, the link to the video. I mean, it is a 2 hour, maybe a little bit shy of a 2 hour meeting, but we'll certainly, I think, give everyone a good understanding of how the town hall has functioned in the past.
Thank you very much, Annie. Okay, members of the committee, I'm going to ask for any questions for clarification for Annie and for folks to also suggest their preferred date. Councillor Russell.
Thank you very much. My recommendation would be not on a Monday or a Tuesday. I also agree with the concern about Friday, that it not be on a Friday. So that would leave the 9th or 10th or 16th or 17th, and all 4 of those days, at least from my perspective, look clear.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Councillor Daigle Gammon.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm good with the consensus of the group.
Thank you. Jordan Waterbury.
Vice Chair, I'm good with the 9th, 10th, 16th, or 17th. I do work sometimes on the evenings in that time of year on Tuesdays. So the Tuesdays, unfortunately, are usually out for me in the evening. So that being said, I do think a Wednesday or Thursday of either week would be best. Thank you.
Thank you, Jordan. Nicole.
Hi, sorry. I think either day would work for me. November is a little hard to predict, like what I have on going on those days. Sometimes, like having a physical disability, my personal care is often in the evenings, as I usually work in the mornings. So I probably could work around that, but that's probably the reason why I couldn't attend last year. But any day would work, I think. I could potentially work around my personal care schedule, but yeah, I think any day for now would be good.
Great. Thank you, Nicole.
No problem.
Rochelle.
Thank you. My work is already booking into November, apparently, and I do have something on the 10th. It's tentative, though, so theoretically could be moved, but my preference is for the following week, the 16th or 17th, would be personal preference, just in terms of what I seemingly have already booked, literally today, funny enough. So that's just my input. Thank you.
Thank you. Elizabeth.
Yeah, I don't think I would be able to do November 10th because it's the day before the long weekend and I'm heading out. So it just seems a little too busy for me. But maybe the November the 9th, or maybe the next week, like the 14th or the 15th. I know that yeah, some people are working Monday, Tuesday, but maybe Wednesday or Thursday of that week would probably be best for me.
Great. And thank you very much, folks. Do you have anything to add, Annie?
Just thank you.
All right.
Yeah, no, Melissa and I will take these dates. I think I heard that the 10th is not going to work for a few folks. So I think the dates, as long as there's no kind of opposition from the committee, the dates that Melissa and I will move forward with to see, you know, what works. I think it's good to have a couple of options, just to provide it to, you know, in the library or wherever we might be looking for a physical hosting space this year. The 9th, 16th, and 17th are the dates that I was hearing some agreement on. So, okay, I'm seeing nods. Wonderful. Melissa and I will move forward with those. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to 9.2. Anything from committee members? And we have none. 9.3, staff updates. There are none this meeting. Article number 10, added items. There have been none. So we're at article number 11, the date of the next meeting, which has been preset for August 15th from 4 until 6. And I think we're to the point of number 12 and require a mover to adjourn the meeting.
This is Rochelle. I'll move to adjourn.
Thank you, Rochelle. The meeting is adjourned at 5:34 p.m.